Today is Wednesday daf. We're up to daf nun tes, and it starts a new sugya right in the middle of the page. Daf nun tes amid aleph. The first word of the line is hamizbech. We were discussing. The last thing is where the mizbech was positioned, and where you shecht and so on. And if you can shecht on top of the mizbech, which section? Amar Rab, right in the middle. Right in the middle. The first word of the line is hamizbech. Amar Rab comes along Rab and he makes a new din. A new subject. Mizbeach shenifkim. If the mizbeach is incomplete, part of it was removed. There's a defect there. Kol hakotshim shenishchetu sham psulin. Any animal that was slaughtered while the mizbeach was nifgim is possible. You cannot use this animal. But we're just starting the Gemara now that if the mizbeach is incomplete, and you shecht a carbon while the mizbeach is incomplete, that carbon is possible. Why does the mizbeach have to be complete? Because he learns it from Mikra Hu B'Yadenu. It's a pasuk, and we have of V'shchachnu. Rav said, I forgot what the pasuk is. He saw like Rav Kahana. Rav Kahana was a Talmud of Rav, and if you remember, he had to flee from. We had the end of Baba Kama. He had to flee from Babel, and when he arrived there, Ashkechei, he once met Rab Shimon Rebbe's son Rab Shimon. The Ka'amah that was saying Mishum Rabbi Shmuel bar Rabbi Yosi, the name Rabbi Shmuel bar Rabbi Yosi. Menayin lemizbeach shenivkim. How do you know? Same thing. How do you know mizbeach that the mizbeach itself is pogum, has a defect? Kol hakochim shenishchetu sham. That knows that an animal that was consecrated and it was suitable to go on mizbeach, and the mizbeach was upstanding, everything was good, and then the mizbeach was flawed. But it doesn't matter. The animal is still alive and it's good. But then when you shechted it, it was the animal was nitcha. You can no longer use the animal. Then that's it. The animal is possible. Remember, it says, "You should shecht on it your oilus and your shlamim." So yesterday's Gemara, we learned that you physically shecht the animals on top of the mizbech. We just had an argument which section of the mizbech. But now we're learning also another drush from there. Olav doesn't mean literally on top. We don't really shecht on top only when you have no choice, when it's packed. Ella kishahu shalom. Olav means because of the mizbech. In other words, you're shechting your oil and shlamim because the mizbech is whole. But like kishahu chasa, but not if the mizbech is missing parts. Is missing a piece. Says in Gemara, Hainu cross. And Rab Kana said, this must be the pasuk the shtamad leil Rav. That Rav said he forgot. This must be the pasuk that a mizbeach shenivkim, and you shechted it while the mizbeach was nivkim, and it's possible. But Rabbi Yochanan goes, but if the animal, let's say you consecrated an animal while the animal and the mizbeach then became nivkim, that's not a problem, because Rab holds, but while the animal is alive, it doesn't get rid. There's no concept of nitcha because it's not yet a carbon. It's only kodesh. It's only when you shecht it, so now it's a carbon, but you can't bring a mizbeach. That's called nitcha. However, Rabbi Yochanan disagrees. He says echotze. He says whether you shechted the animal while it's pogum, and or rechotze, even if you shechted it after you fixed the mizbeach. But if you consecrated the animal while the mizbeach was pogum, that's called what? That's called, I hold that animals, even when they're alive, they could be nitcha, because it's already kodesh, it's designated for a carbon, and there was a period that while the animal was alive, it wasn't shaykh to be a carbon. So therefore, it was nitcha. It's psul the apostle. But my pligi, what's the argument? This very point. So Balachai calls my animals alive, ain't nitchin, it's not nitcha at all. And Rabbi Yochanan Savar, even Balachayim, Nitcha and Balachayim, even living animals also can, if they're not suitable, they are considered Nitcha, it's Nitcha way. Okay. Says the Gemara Mesh, I'll ask you a question. Kol HaKodshim Shahayu. All those kabbanis that existed, Ad Shaloi Nivna HaMizbeach. Nivna HaMizbeach would have been now talking about the second Beis HaMikdash. So all the animals that were prepared to be on the Beis HaMikdash, but before the Mizbeach was built, before Ezra built the Mizbeach, the Achikach Nivna HaMizbeach, and then the Mizbeach was built, Psulun is possible. It's possible. So what do we see from Elochai? That living animals can be, it can be also Nitcha. Before we go any further,
that was Shasita Abomas, isn't
this is when even in Bubble, no Heter Abamas. By Heter Abamas is in the first Beis HaMikdash. Once they ask it, ask forever.
Then what did they have? What were they putting away animals?
One second. We'll get to that in a minute. So right now, like this. When it comes to a case of nida v'nitche, like we had in Morris and Head of him, if it was suitable and then it was repudiated, and then chosav nida, we say that the animal, once it's disqualified forever. When it comes to dichul mikara, we had this whole Gemara Sukkah there in the Luva Gozel. When it comes to dichul mikara, it was never yet, from the moment you started, it was never yet suitable. Machlekes, if that's called dichul, he was never pushed away. He just, as some say, he was pushed away, and some say no, he just didn't start yet. He didn't start the mitzvah because it didn't have a chance to start. It's not good. So if that's pshat in the Baraisa, you take it literally. Here we see dichlumi. Forget about the living animals. Here you see the concept more than that. The principle that dichlumi kara, because you consecrate the animal before the mizbeach is built. It was never suitable, and yet we're saying that he can never bring it, even though after you built the mizbeach. So from here, let's repudiate all those authorities who say that dichlumi kara is not a dichlumi. So obviously you have to amend the Braisa. Now, this is astonishing what the Gemara says now here. Says the Gemara, so Nivna, if you're going to take the Braisa literally, that means when you set aside the animal, it was already Dichumi Kara, right? Because there's no Mizbeach there. So how can the Chal be a Machlekes and if it's Dichumi Kara? Eli, you must have to amend the Braisa. Ad Shaloi Neres Mizbeach. You consecrated the animal during the first Beis Hamikdash. You consecrated the animal before the first in the first Beis Hamikdash, and in the times of the Nebuchadnezzar, and then the Beis Hamikdash, the Mizbeach was destroyed. So what's the shaila? If you didn't shecht it yet, what are you going to shecht it? And now the second Beis Hamikdash is being built, and there's a Mizbeach, and the animal's still around.
Sorry, this is
the animal has to be at least 70 years old. Which animal can live that long? So, which cow lives 70 or sheep?
You bring there is a year old.
Yeah, and it's not allowed to be too old, as Gemara will ask in a minute. But Gemara is not talking theory. In theory, you set aside the animal, the first Beis Hamikdash, and now you want to be marketed with the second Beis Hamikdash. And it's not only 77 years until they built it and everything else. So 7 years later. Ella actually neres I got a problem. Not that you can have an animal that's 77 years old. The problem is, halachically, legally, you're not allowed to bring an animal that's too old. So what's pshat in the Braisa? Ella must be talking about during the Beis Hamikdash. Ella actually nivgim hamizbech. Must amend, not building, not destroying. Talking about the mizbech was there when you set aside, everything was good. The mizbech was complete, and then something happened, and it was part of chiseled off, fell off. The acham nivgim hamizbech. And what? And it's possible. What do we see from here? It doesn't say anywhere here that he shechted the animal. It was the animal was alive when this happened. So it's a kasha Rav. You Rav say, Kolzman, if this happened, this the problem. While the animal's alive, it's not called dichui. But Fedish, we're talking about here, the animal didn't say a word about shechting here. And it says that what? And we have no choice but to amend the Braisa to say that what? That was ditche. And so Rav answers back. How many changes have you made to the Braisa? Let's make one more change. You actually shechted the animal as well. And therefore it's dichui. No kasha here. Okay, we have another problem with Rav. Rav himself. You, Rav, say the mizbeach is not intact. It's possible you cannot eat from kochim. But Rav Gidl's the name of Rav. Mizbeach, the inner mizbeach. Sheneka, the inner mizbeach, if it was, let's say, completely removed, nevertheless, maktiding taters b'mekayme. You could bring taters in its very place. So we see clearly, you don't need a mizbeach. Now, just like you don't need the mizbeach pnimi, you don't need the inner mizbeach to do its job. L'chayda, you don't need the outer mizbeach to do its job. You don't have to make a mizbeach. What's the difference? Says the Gemara, that's not a problem. Rava says, just because the inner mizbeach you can still bring the potatoes, the outer mizbeach you want to compare to it, but we have a problem. The outer mizbeach you also need the sprinkling of the blood and the roasting of the fats of the emurim, and even Rabbi Yehuda, which Rabbi Yehuda will talk about now in the Gemara. Rava said, as we'll soon see, that Rabbi Yehuda bedamim, that even though Rabbi Yehuda says the floor of the Beis Hamikdash was sanctified, that they can actually cook on the floor, just like we learned before yesterday. You can mishech the top of the beach. They were remember they shared everything. You can Mishlei Melech sanctified the entire ritzvah of the base of the Azorah that you can actually cook there, but still the sprinkling of the blood and the murim have to be done on the mizbeach proper. Even though Rav said that the inner mizbeach is gone, you can still do ketaidas. Yes, but where you have a carbon, you need blood. Cannot do it. That's what he's saying. In Mizbeach, Shenivgim, I said the animal's no good because how can you sprinkle the blood? What's this Rabbi Yehuda? What are you talking about? Fascinating machlekes. My Rabbi Yehuda. What's this Rabbi Yehuda? The Tanya we learned. Who on the first day when they build it, Mishloimel build the base of Mikdash, Kiddush, Hameler, Teichachot. It says the first day he decided to sanctify the entire courtyard itself. The entire courtyard, because that's where he brought all the kabbanas. And then the pasuk says, very important, why did he do that? Because the mizbeach that they used till then, which is Moshe Rabbeinu's mizbeach and the outer mizbeach, because the mizbeach of Hashem is cotton was too small, mehachil. It was too small to contain all these kabbanas. If you take little pshat in the pasuk, means that Moshe Rabbeinu's mizbeach was too small. It was very small. So comes along Rabbi Yehuda and says, Devarim kiksavan. Excuse me. That he take it literally. He's makdish the floor in order for them to be able to bring all the inyanim on the floor.
They would like a small fire on the side somewhere.
All over the Azara, they made fire so they can actually bring the kabbanas there. All the oilers and the shlamim that they brought Chanukah Mizbeach. So what do you have to do with Moshe Rabbeinu's Mizbeach? What about Shlomo Melech's Mizbeach? So we'll soon see that Shlomo Melech's Mizbeach also was too small. So I had to use the floor. Why is it too small? We'll talk about it in a minute. Says the Gemara, she take it literally. It says in the pasuk, it says in the pasuk, how many karbanas did they were able to bring on Moshe Rabbeinu's Mizbeach and Choshes? 1,000 karbanas a day. And how many did they bring the Chanukah Mizbeach? They brought 142,000 kabbanas. 22,000 there, and then another 20,000. So it's 142,000 all up. Says Rabbi Yasi, if you make a cheshbon of the oilus or the minion, Amos Zegadol Mazeh. Moshe Rabbeinu's Shlomo Melech's Mizbeach was far greater, and we'll soon see the cheshbonos. But Moshe Rabbeinu, you could do 1,000 a day. Was according to Rabbi Yosef cheshbonos, the top of Moshe Rabbeinu's Mizbeach was 5 amas by 5 amas. 1 amma on each side was taken up by the kronos. Then another amma, the inner amma, the kohen have to walk around. So how much space was there on the Mizbeach to work with? 1 amma by 1 amma. Now the Mizbeach that Shlomo Melech built, so we learned it was 32 amas. You take off 4, it was 28 by 28. But he learns, and we'll see in the Gemara, that was actually 20. The space that they were able to use was 20. According to us, was the top was 28. Take off for the kronos is 26, and take off for the walking around is 24. So according to us, it was a space, a usable space, a net space of 24 by 24. But Rabbi Yasi says there was a space. We'll see later. We're not here, but later it was 20 by 20. 20 by 20. Is 400. What is 1 by 1? By Moshe Rabbeinu is 1. So if Moshe Rabbeinu is 1 amma can do 1,000, what can he do 400 times? At 400,000. So what was the problem? So why would you have to use them as the floor? Use them as Shlomo Melech's plenty of room. All they did was 142,000 animals. That plenty of room. They could do 400,000 animals. So what is Pshat in the pasuk? What it means here is.
Fires also. Wonderful fires.
Yes. There was plenty, but yeah, can make as many as they need. You only had a Maracha Rishon and Maracha Shni. They had 2 fires. Maracha Shni we learned was for the taters, the coal they used, and the Maracha Rishon was the main one.
And they uses up some of the space.
Yeah, but there was plenty, still plenty of room. 400,000 make a cheshbon, 300,000. So why, according to Rabbi Yasi, they sanctified the floor is pasha to build the mizbeach on it. So you make the floor holy to build the mizbeach. So he says, so why does it say that Moshe, that the Mizbeach was too small? And it says Mizbeach L'Choshes, which actually talks about Moshe, not even about Shleimus. According to Rabbi Yehuda, we have to understand why the problem was Shlomo Melech's Mizbeach, which is not called Mizbeach L'Choshes. That's Moshe. Why is the pasuk said Moshe's was too small? We'll still see. But Rabbi Yasi says that why does it say Moshe is too small? They wanted to stop using Moshe, but it was not nice to say that Moshe Rabbeinu's Mizbeach he can no longer use. So they said in Metzias he can't use it anymore because it's too small. They didn't want to say that now it's possible because Shlomo Melech's Mizbeach took over. So they use Elamau Kot Mahachal Kadam on the Chavev. A guy says to a friend, plenty now is a guy's a midget, and a midget can't be a kohen serving base of English, but really possible way for other reasons. But we decided to say it in a very nice way, like Lashon Nikiyah. But Rabbi Yehuda, Shapikam Rabbi Yasi, is Rabbi Yasi right? There's plenty of room on the Mizbeach, ample room on the Mizbeach. Rabbi Yehuda Tamei. Now we're going to learn what's going on here. He said, he said that he's wrong. I believe that Moshe Rabbeinu's Mizbeach was not 1 amma by 1 amma of net space. It was 6 by 6. And you know why? Because I hold when it says it was 5 ammas, that's from the midpoint. That was the radius, not the diameter. And if it was the radius, then it's really 10 ammas. And if you have 10 ammas, take off 1 amma on each side for the Karen. That makes it 8. Take off 1 amma each side for the Kohanim. That's 6. So 6 by 6 is 36. So 36 versus 400 is only 11 times. 11,000 kabbanas they can bring in the Mizbeach was not enough. That's why they had to be maktish the floor. How do I know that Moshe Rabbeinu's Mizbeach was what I just said? So I'll tell you. The time we learned, it says the Torah, it was 5 by 5, says the Rabbi Yehuda, Dvari, Kishav, Rabbi Yehuda says, no, it's exactly 5 by 5. Then you reduce, the Kronos, and the Ragli Kohanim, all you have left of net space was 1 by 1, usable space. Rabbi Yehuda says, no, Nemakan, it says over here, the word, Ravua, it says 5 amas by 5 amas, Ravua, yeah, should be a square. So you have the word square here. But Nema Lahal, you have the same thing by Yecheskel when he's describing the Mizbeach in the future. He says over there, it says the Ariel, which we learned before was the Mizbeach. And he says over there should be 12 by 12 Revua. Mal Ahalan, just like over there, we know when it comes to the square of Yecheskel, 12 by 12 is actually only the radius. It's 24 by 24. So Malahalam Tziyusa, we know that he's only counting the radius. Hoyemoided Avkat, and we make Exer Shavu. The word over here also it's only the radius. Tziyusa Yemoided. So you want to know how you talk over this only radius. It says V'Ariel Shteim Ese Ama. It says the Ariel was Shteim Ese Ama, and it says the square L'Chol Ruach. It means not 12 the entire diameter, it means the radius. Every corner was 12 by 12. How do I know? I know you made the entire Mizbeach was 12 by 12. When it says in the Pasuk that El Arbas Revov, 12 by 12, and this is 4 squares. For Melamed Shem'emtza Moedes. We're saying 4 squares, each one is 12 by 12. So in other words, it's 24 by 24. So I'm making a hekesh revua from the mizbeach of Moshe, mizbeach of Choshes, to the mizbeach of the outside mizbeach that Yecheskel is talking about. No, so that's why the mizbeach is much bigger. But Rabbi Yossi, what does he do with Exer Shava? If it's Exer Shava, you can't just dismiss it. Ki Goma, he says, you're right. I use Exer Shava, but not from the revua of Yecheskel. Ki Goma Exer Shava, that's a problem, by the way, learning Exer Shava of Yecheskel. So we say it's more of a Gila Milsa than a real Exer Shava. You can't have Exer Shava from the Torah and Tanakh. Rabbi Yossi, Ki Goma Exer Shava, begoiva the Gomer. He says it's talking about the height of Moshe Rabbeinu's thing. Because the Torah says how high was his Mizbeach L'Choshes to the Amos. But I'm going to learn from the Vur, that was actually 10 Amos high, the way we learned till now. How do I do that? It's time to be learned. How tall was the outer Mizbeach by Moshe Rabbeinu? It says 3 Amos with the height. The body kicks over. You don't take it literally. I don't take literally the width, but I take literally the height. So the width, he says 5 means 10, but the height is 3. The width, because I have Exer Shava, the Vur. And Rabbi Yossi, no. Rabbi Yossi says, no, when it comes to height, I don't take it literally. Tell them here the Vur. Now what? It's only 1 quarter. The Nema Lahal, and it says over there later on, when it comes to the inner Mizbech, it says it should be an amma by an amma, and square amma, and it should be 2 ammas the height. And it says over there also the Vur year should be a square. Now what do we know over there? That the height was double the length. And since in the outer Mizbeach, we know that the width and length was 5 ammas by 5 ammas, so the height must be double that. And that's what we learn for the Vur. So we learn the outer Mizbeach for the inner Mizbeach. Double the height. So it's 10 ammas high. Rabbi Yehuda says, it says, Rabbi Yehuda said to him, it says, it says clearly that the curtain around it was 5 ammas high. What's the problem? But you have the Mizbeach 10 ammas high, which means anybody standing outside of the Beis HaMikdash or the Mishkan was able to see the Kohen standing there with blood and everything else. It was not coveting. He had no discretion whatsoever. We think he had curtains for it. Give a little privacy. Rabbi Yossi said, we have a number of psukim. You brought a pasuk which says the curtain of 5 ammas. So like in another pasuk, it says that the kale hachotzer and then the curtain of masach and all that, and it says that asher al hamishkan and al hamizbech are all around. It says al hamishkan v'al hamizbech. It says al hamishkan al hamizbech. And therefore, my Mishkan, we know the Mishkan was 10 ammas high. It says it equates Mishkan to Mizbeach. So I know that the Mizbeach also was 10 ammas high. Af Mizbeach, Yud ammas. Mizbeach was 10 amas high. And then there's another part which says, Koloyim was at least Chomesh Esrei Amma ala Kasev. The very front entrance, the curtain was 15 amas high. And Bepashas, that's the same height all around. So the curtains were actually 15 amas high. The Mizbeach was 10, the Mishka was 10, but it was totally covered because it was 15 amas high. Eyes, how come it says 5 amas? 5 amas from the top of the Mizbeach, another 5 amas. That's what it means. Umatam leme hey amas, misfas Mizbeach amam, the top of Mizbeach and onwards. Umatam leimer. So I say, what's Rabbi Yossi going to how? If Rabbi Yossi says it was 10 amas high, but it says clearly the pasuk was only 3 amas, the outer Mizbeach and times of Moshe. V'shalosh amas kamasa. So he says misfas say v'v'lamayla. Remember the Yisrael 1 amma high. But just like Shlomo will say the same by Moshe. 1 amas high, go in, and then 5 amas, and then he goes in. That's already 6. And then you have 3. If you don't count the kronos, it's 3 amas. That's what it means. The top part, the top section. But Rabbi Yehuda, what does he do? He learns. Why the Gemara repeats again? Don't know. Could be just learned it. So they both agree that they shava. According to Rabbi Yehuda, you learn from the Mizbeach of Yecheskel, the outer Mizbeach. According to Rabbi Yossi, you learn from the inner Mizbeach from Moshe. Well, Rabbi Yehuda comes Chazi. Rabbi Yehuda, he said what the Mizbeach was Sachako. The Mizbeach was only 3 amas high, and he learns the curtain was 5 amas high. How tall is an average person? We had about Basa 3 amas. When Rashi teaches that include the head, it doesn't include the head. There's Bama teaches, but a person is 3 amas high. So the Mizbeach was 3 amas. The kohen was 3 amas. The curtain was only 5. Everybody can see the kohen doing the avodah. So you get the same problem with you. Rabbi Yehuda comes as a kohen. Why does it bother him? Then you see the kohen doing work. So he says, "He the kohen was chazi, but you don't see him doing the work. The problem is not seeing his head. All you see is his head. Big deal. But you don't, or his shoulders even. You can't see his actions." Says he about a bishop, because that's where the kohen walk around. Where the kohen stand. They stood on this perimeter doing the work on top of the Mizbeach.
Normally, if you're counting the height of something, you don't count from halfway up.
I know, because that's where they did a lot of the services, so therefore, but you're right, maybe that's why you didn't like it. Now, let's just finish the sugi here. We'll make pause. Rabbi Yehuda, it says Kiddush. We understand why Shlomo sanctified the floor, because he used the floor to burn the kabbanis. Elo, Rabbi Yossi, my Kiddush. For Rabbi Yossi, they used them as Mizbeach, top Mizbeach. Why was he mekadosh the floor? He says, I'll tell you what, nothing to do with that. Lahamid ba Mizbeach. Because you're going to have to build the Mizbeach there, so you had to mekadosh the Azara to place the Mizbeach on there. It says cotton. It says that the Mizbeach was small. Moshe Rabbeinu's Mizbeach was small, and Shlomo was big. That's all he's saying here, because Moshe was too small, because it says the Choshes was small, and according to Rabbi Yossi, they actually used them as Mizbeach to bring all the kabbanis, no problem. And as if the pasuk explained, why did we build a brand new Mizbeach? Because there were many more Yidden, and they had many more kabbanis. We couldn't use Moshe Rabbeinu's anymore. And Rabbi Yehuda, my cotton. Rabbi Yehuda, first of all, Moshe Rabbeinu wasn't small; it was actually big. This is what he meant. Mizbeach avonim she'osa shloime tachas mizbeach hanochoshes cotton hoya. We're actually not talking about Moshe Rabbeinu's mizbeach. We're talking about Shloime's mizbeach. Why did we mekadosh the floor? Because Shloime's mizbeach was too small, and Shloime's mizbeach was a substitute for Moshe Rabbeinu's mizbeach hanochoshes. So therefore, we referred to Shloime's mizbeach as mizbeach hanochoshes. Telling what about my plea, what's the machlekes? One of them says you learn out the outer Mizbeach after Yehuda from Cheska, which is the outer Mizbeach. They don't know who's been can't learn from the inner Mizbeach. Totally different kind of Mizbeach. Maz, you don't bring kabbalah, whatever all these things the zikas dam. Maz are done in kli mikli. In Moshe Rabbeinu's Mizbeach, Pnimi was a keli. It was just because they transported it, and so was the Mizbeach. Everything was transportable. It was a portable item, a vessel. They ain't done in keli mebinyan. But Cheska was a permanent fixture. It was made a stone. Different. Amar Rava said, just finishing the sugi here. Amar Rava says, Rava, and we had this before. This is what we're all leading up to. Rava said, but even though Rabbi Yehuda said that they used the floor, but when it came to Zikas Hadam, had to be on the Mizbeach itself, regardless of the fact that it was very busy. Moed Rabbi Yehuda bedamim, because the blood you have to do Mizbeach. And that's what we said before about that, but how we answered the problem with Rav there. Why was nifcha? Because you need, even though they're living animal, because you need they're able to use the Mizbeach. The time we learned, the Yehuda says, Pesach, Kois Echad, Hayimale. We had this before. What did they do? He said they did. Kois Echad Hayimale Medamat Rubens. They used to mix. They took all the damat rubens, all the mixed blood, because sometimes so much activity here. It could be that that the blood spilled out from one of the kabbanas, and you remember if you don't sprinkle the blood in his beach, you're not yaitza. So therefore, they want to fix it up. So they picked up, and we said min in a bottle, even though it's only a drop there. So they filled it up. And they poured it on his beach. And they would pour on his back, so therefore they would. Why? If anybody blood fell on the ground, they just fixed it up. Now, if you hold that Sover Rabbi Yehuda holds Kula Azora Mikacha, if you hold that Rabbi Yehuda holds entire Azora was holy. Sorry. Exactly. You already did. Whatever you, just like you could check kabbanas on the floor. Yeah, exactly. The blood was sprayed properly. Who cares if it landed on his back or landed on the floor? Says the Gemara, no, that's no raya. That's Rava. That's your whole raya, Rava. That because you must say that. That's not a raya. Why? Because the dilma should accept a shvicha mikoich adabin. And maybe when it says you have to pour the blood, the fact is it fell. Remember we were talking about the blood spilled out. You didn't pour it, so that's a problem. That said, but we're trying to fix up that part of it because you have to do it, throw it, spill it out. Imkain, think about okay, very good, interesting question. So why bring it to the mizbeach? Pick up the blood and pour it back out. Okay, pick up the blood. And Nishkele, take the blood, and just turn it over the keli and pour it back down. Because you tell me the floor is just as holy as the top of the mizbeach. Then again, no raya. Everyone agreed that it's still mitzvah muvcha to do on mizbeach, and this is only done as a last resort. But that's why they did it. It doesn't prove Rabbi Yehuda holds. So Rava has no proof. He still says that, but he has no proof. We'll pause for a second.